So we're going to finish talking about more about the rainbows. Hopefully you guys have started eating as much of the rainbow every day as you can. And I ended the previous slide was that, right, about white, that white is in the rainbow, but hopefully when you're eating the rainbow, it doesn't mean you're eating any of this, or you're not telling me about this stuff. And I do recognize with white rice, it's an interesting thing culturally. We talked about this in my Chem 106, I have a number of students who are from Vietnam, but and in my household, there are people from Asia that are in my house. And when we started refining rice and took out all the fiber and all the vitamins, it became a status symbol that you ate white rice because it meant your family could afford to buy the rice that had all the nutrients taken out. They didn't realize they were taking all the nutrients out. And so it's, for some reason, that status symbol has kept up, but it created a B vitamin deficiency and stuff. And so somebody probably will be talking about that. And I also talked about, I was listening to a talk from this one guy, and he said, absolutely, like the sugar, the refined, that's like at the bottom. That's going to destroy you. The fake sugar is absolutely going to destroy you. And then he said the next one was cereal. I forgot to put that one on there. The processed breakfast cereal. And it was actually when they looked at stuff, cornflakes was the worst. And then the pastas, because there are also the white pastas. And it has to do with when you're grinding the flour up that small. And then he put the white bread and then the brown bread. And whole grains, he has up there just below vegetables. I mean, vegetables are at like what you should be eating, at least 50% of your diet, and fruit. But whole grains are really good for you. So quinoa, and I'm pretty sure I get into quinoa today. Sorry. And then Maddie, just before you leave today, I need to know, or you can type it into the chat. You haven't picked a topic, and so I should talk about that. That next week, you guys are doing presentations. You're all doing presentations. I would really appreciate that you're here because it is hard. I will not be recording. And so part of your grade is that you are here present and that you're going to be taking notes, and you're also going to have to ask questions. So I have let go of the shock of people actually showing up in this class, but you're gonna have to make the effort, make sure your alarm, make sure you have 2 alarms set so you're here before 8 o'clock, because it is distracting. And so the people who are here already presenting, so show respect to your classmates, be here, and we'll be presenting both days. And so if somebody knows they want to volunteer to go Monday, I'm going to kind of leave it up to you that if you're ready to go. It's going to be a rainy weekend. It's going to start raining again today. Go play today. It's going to be a beautiful sunny day, and then the rain comes back tomorrow for like 4 days. So do it and get it over with Monday, so you can just sit back Wednesday, because the sun comes back out after Monday again. But I will see who's ready on Monday, and your papers are due then at the end of the week. And it's the same parameters as last time, but you do need to have the studies in your talk. So talking about the studies, since we're split over 2 days, it should be a really good solid. I didn't talk about the vitamins because you guys are doing the talk on your vitamins. So if it's vitamin A, and there's so many studies on each of them. So this should be a little bit easier, and put it in your language. And the dark side, every one of these has a dark side. That you can talk about. And if you want to change, there's many other options. So just talk to me. The other thing I want on your radar is the last set of presentations then are 3 weeks after that. Everything starts moving faster suddenly. We're like halfway through the 7th week, and then suddenly it's like a month from now, we're done. We're done. Everything, grades are submitted, I'm leaving. And so your last presentations will be on a spice. So you can be pondering that. I saved that one for last because that will be really fun. There's so much information, and we'll get into that. But for this week, reading the rainbow, and we talk about white. Again, yogurt and milk. We're talking more about the fruits and vegetables. But you can put your beans. You can do different colored beans and salmon and stuff. But mushrooms, and I think my mushroom talk is next week. That I didn't put it in there. Sorry, I went backwards. and white, I talked about detox and stuff. And so I ended by saying we're going to talk about chocolate, the color brown or black. It's deep brown, and cacao, raw chocolate. That's not processed. So that when you see at the bottom, it says Dutch processed, that's actually is processed, and that does change things. So you want to get it, and it's so easy now to find raw cacao. So it's going to say, it looks like they misspelled it, but they did. So it's CA instead of CO, cocoa, because then it's processed. But one of the most famous molecules in cacao is not on this picture, is the theobromine. That's on the next slide. But it has these. These are the polyphenols and the flavonoids. And yeah, the good thing about, you guys get to talk like about vitamin A, I'm pretty sure, or iodine, I'm pretty sure you can say those words, as opposed to picking the polyphenols and having to keep saying. Quercetin shows up a lot in different things. This is like one of the magic ones, but it's not that we isolate them and take it in a pill. They don't work that way. The supplements, they've been showing that it really is taking it in the whole food. So chocolate's my favorite. So you can add a column there and add, I know Steven's already on that. He's like, sure, but just gave me an okay again to eat chocolate. Another thing about chocolate, besides those molecules, I went on a tangent this morning and added a bunch of slides from my other class, that dark chocolate actually contains some other molecules. And again, I forgot to put these in, but the one's called N-acetyl-ethanolamine, which has to do with the molecule of bliss in your body. So we have a bliss molecule that is naturally in our body called anandamide. So Ananda was one of Buddha's right-hand man, and when he reached the bliss state, the word in Sanskrit for bliss, for joy, they don't actually have a word for joy. They only have a word for bliss, is Ananda. But this molecule that's found in chocolate actually make sure that your body doesn't break down the natural bliss molecule that's there. And so you have more of your own natural molecule to create the bliss, because whenever it's something that's within us, our body kind of knows the balance and the vibrations because it's already part of us. And then also in dark chocolate, there's 3 molecules that are similar to our bliss molecule, and they actually stimulate just like that. And so they stimulate what's called the endocannabinoid response. So there's the word cannabinoid. So this is what marijuana is stimulating, is the symbol or the system, and which is worth mentioning. And so you can make the periodic table. Again, I'm a chemist. Only the, see if anybody remembers the first family, right? The alkaline metals, which are the most reactive, are the only ones that are super dark, or the rare earth metals. But that theobromine is actually, there's no bromine, speaking of the periodic table. Theo means God, right? So theology. And then the word bromine, I believe, means food or nectar. So it's the nectar of the gods. The element bromine is named for a certain reason. I can't remember. But this is just looking, I didn't know that white chocolate even had any, because white chocolate isn't actually chocolate. They just gave it the name because of the texture. But somebody, whoever made the slide, saying it does. But theobromine, they've isolated it, and you can take it in pill forms. There's all these studies that show it does these wonderful things. But again, when you're getting it in the whole food, and you can find the cacao powder everywhere. And the other thing with chocolates, most of you are much younger, that you're going to like the sweetness of the milk chocolate. And so the unfortunate thing with the milk chocolate is it has low levels of cacao, which means low levels of theobromine, and then high levels of sugar. And so the higher the percentage of the cacao, they all have percentages on the front now, that usually means they're taking away less and less sugar. And so, and you can find a lot of them. I do want to warn you also, because there's a lot of chocolate out there. It says no sugar added. And most of them then use the polyalcohols, and we've talked about those polyalcohols. Whenever you see that OL ending, that you have to be careful because they cause digestive disorder and they interfere with your microbiome and stuff. And then of course the fake sugars like sucralose is just pure evil to it. What is yours? Yours is with monk fruit, the Hue bars that you were always talking about. I thought it had a polyalcohol in it.
They're either with coconut sugar or just dates.
Okay. Okay. It might have been somebody else's I was looking at. There's one, the monk fruit. It's a conversation, Stephen, and I don't know the answer. Monk fruit is showing up in everything, and there's like no research on it. And so it's a natural, it's called monk fruit. It's like this huge thing, and it's a natural sweetener that doesn't have calories. And I don't know
A lot
enough.
of it's being combined with erythritol too, which
Yeah, and that's where I don't like it, that usually when you find it as a sweetener, they add a polyalcohol. Anyway, chocolate. And then this is, right, you can find the chemistry of chocolate slide. So there's the theobromine and then also these other molecules. But here we go, there's the fats. So it does have fatty acids that are going to be saturated, but with saturated fats are not bad. It's more all the stuff we've done to the oils. Sorry, I have it just right. So anandamide, I wanted to talk about that because chocolate stimulates the system in us. And so that's a reminder, have fun with your slideshow. So put a picture of yourself, personalized, be like, that's why I want to pick vitamin D or whatever. You can find a personal connection with it, and you're not going to find a picture of me doing this, but it's almost impossible unless you make your own picture with anandamide to get a picture without weed in there. And because this is what THC mimics, is anandamide. So we knew about not THC, but about weed. It grows, it's called weed because it grows as a weed everywhere on the planet. And so people have been smoking it and getting their high from it. And then they found the receptor for it. So the cannabinoid receptor system, there's a couple different ones. And so they were like, why do we have a receptor for plant molecules? So it's the same thing with morphine. And so in 1992, they finally found the molecule in us because there's actually small amounts in our brain. And for those of you who've had some chemistry, this is a fatty acid. Actually, you all have, it's hard to see down here. You can see it on this one, it's an omega-6 fatty acid. So these are the kinks, if you remember, we talked about that. And then what happens up here is the acid part gets cut off and it's modified. There's actually a second one, and I don't know if it's a picture on the next slide, but it is the molecule of bliss. And my theory is children have much higher levels because children definitely have the ability to find that bliss point. And when you think about happy moments, you do also create that. So being playful, not worrying about it. And these are Tibetan monks that I had the opportunity to teach English. And I took them out somewhere and we just like sit on the side of the road and have a picnic with a whole bunch of stuff. You can see they brought their sodas, which is fascinating thing from other cultures. But anyway, they were always joking around my blankets and they gave me from Mexico. They made into one of those robes, and I have a picture of them standing. But they were some of the most playful. This picture of Joey, when we were in Nepal, the monsoon hit, and we had a 2-person tent and 3 of us, and we were stuck in the tent for like 3 days. And so you become really giddy and stuff. And we were somehow blessed where we put our tent. We almost put it in this other spot, and where we happened to put it in the middle of nowhere, we didn't get into the mud. And then when we left 2 days later, the place we had originally put the tent and then for some reason moved it was just like a lake. And so I know, right? It's like my backyard right now. But this is actually to me really cool. I know I talked about with my other class, but this is the other molecule. So again, it's an omega-6. And then our body modifies them. And there's probably going to be a whole bunch of these that they're going to start finding, but our body breaks it down. There's an enzyme, and then you don't have the bliss. And so that's a problem. And so you all know somebody who's just always like in a state of joy. You've all been there where you have something happens and just no matter what, you just say really happy, right? And you can all think of that, like you have those days or those weeks and you just stay in this beautiful place. And for some reason you're able, so there's 20% of humans, I don't know where they got this number 20% from, who don't make this enzyme. And so they never break this down. They just stay in bliss. And so every once in a while, I'll have a student and they'll just smile all the time, no matter what, even during tests. And they're just so grateful also, like, and they always end the day by saying, hey, have a great day, or thank you for a great class. But so that enzyme called fatty acid amide hydrolase. That's the other A that I keep forgetting. And it rapidly breaks this down. And so they say that 20% of people have a mutation, so they're perpetually happy. And I believe this enzyme must get activated at puberty, because if you think about it, that's when most people, I can't imagine how people can be middle school teachers, because nobody smiles in middle school. But the thing that's interesting, when I get to do my kids class again, I actually work with middle school kids. They're my favorite. And because I don't have them in the school setting, I have them here and they're outside of school and we're just playing and having fun, and they still know how to giggle and jiggle. The problem that happens is if they have a friend with them, because then they have to behave a certain way around that friend, which is very interesting and stuff. But anyway, I think at puberty, this enzyme must become activated. But if you don't have the enzyme, if you can somehow deactivate it, you're just always happy. So reminder, you want to talk about studies in your own way. And so they took this mutation and they injected it into rats or somehow, and these rats were always happy. I don't know if this is or mice, they're rodents. It's a good way to get around it. I don't know if that's a real picture, it's probably Photoshop, but I don't know, I'm like going, how do the researchers know that a rodent is happy? Like, because I know people have pet rats, but I'm like, they don't smile. You don't see that. I mean, your dog, you can see them when they're happy because they're all wiggly and jiggly and stuff. I'm not sure I can tell. A cat kind of wiggles too at a different level. But anyway, the thing they found, again, I don't know how they did this with mice, but when they had their higher levels of anandamide, they were able to extinguish fear-based memories. And so they dealt with fear in a much better way. And my theory is that 20% of the people are the Sherpas and the Tibetans who had one of the most awful fear genocides that happened that nobody talks about, which was when the Chinese government, the Maoist government, came in and took over Tibet and just slaughtered them. When I was in Tibet, I was like, whoa, look at all these ruins. And I was thinking, like when you're in the Southwest and you see all these ruins from thousands and thousands of years ago, and you're like, it's so cool. And I'm like, I wonder if anybody's gone and excavated these ruins. And I'm being like this little anthropologist. And then about 2 days into it, I'm like, oh my gosh, these are all ruins from 50 years ago, from the Cultural Revolution, was going in and destroying every Buddhist monastery. So these were thousands-year-old monasteries up on cliffs, and they were just, all you had were remains and stuff. And there were going to be a lot of bones in there because they killed all the monks. And, there's like maybe 10% or 5% of the monasteries that are left. But anyway, these people still have that place of joy of moving on. And so it allows, for some reason, this connectivity within the brain, so you can plan and deal with emotions. So not getting stuck in the fear, kind of like what has happened, that you're able to process it and stuff. Mickey Mouse definitely is lacking that enzyme because he's always happy. And anyway, you get better communication, lower anxiety. And the thing that's really interesting is people who are regular meditators, that's why that picture was there, actually don't express the enzyme. And so there is something called epigenetics, like we're so consumed now in biology with genetics and what protein is expressed, like in that study. And I think they're all completely wrong. There's something called epigenetics. Epi means beyond genetics. and it's what genes are expressed, and that every single one of you has the capacity to stop expressing that enzyme so that your molecule that's there can keep you in bliss. And then you don't have to go to stores and stand in line to try to get plants to make you do that. So yeah, and meditation is the way you go about it, as well as eating a healthy diet. They talk about it as like 4 pillars, so that it's diet, eating the rainbow. So you don't have to think about, did I get this much calcium? Did I get that? If you're eating food variety that feeds your microbiome and they feed you, finding the time, whether it's gratitude, a lot of you are trying your best to do mindful May, which is finding that time to take a deep breath before you eat, trying to eat slower, so you're not like shoveling it in like we all do it, eating on the go, instead sitting down and actually doing. Some of you said you're going to do like 1 meal a day in silence, which is really beautiful. So hopefully you have been able to, and that you keep doing that, but your body will thank you. And it takes time that you increase the levels because you're not breaking it down. And as you keep doing it, those levels will naturally stay higher and you'll keep increasing. And so it's not going to happen in a day or a week, but you do start noticing changes. And so that's looking at it at a molecular level. And so we all have the capacity so that 100% of humans shift. There's also, I don't know if any of you ever heard the 100th monkey theory. You can Google it. So it was some island is what the story comes from. And they had these monkeys on each beach and they gave them bananas and they threw them in the sand. So all the bananas were covered with sand. And so on the one beach, eventually one of the monkeys looked at the banana and looked at the water and took his banana to the water and cleaned it off. And then the other monkey saw that and started cleaning their bananas too. And this is the part that gets really weird. At the same moment on the other beach, every monkey changed and started cleaning their banana from the sand. And they were like, whoa, what just happened? Anyway, so they call it was when, and I'm gonna get it kind of wrong, but it was when the 100th monkey on that one beach suddenly started walking to the water, all the monkeys on the island reversed. And so it's the idea that humanity wants enough of us get in the correct mindset of love rather than fear, that we're all going to make the shift. So even when you feel like you're the only one out there, you're not, because there's other people. But anyway, there's 4 parts to it: eating healthy, finding that calming, peaceful time, because if you're able to exude that calming peacefulness, it makes a difference. It makes a difference. People start noticing, and then people are calmer around you. Sleep. So something Jared and I were talking about before, and my schedule is term, but there is a myth that 8 hour is not 8 hours for everyone. As people get older, they actually need a little bit less sleep. Most of you are in an age range where you probably need more than 8 hours to feel fully blissful. But when if you start finding a mindful practice, you start needing even less. And then also having a support group, having a group, so whether it's your class and stuff, that's what we were talking about in my lab yesterday. It was just, the lab didn't work, but it was like the most successful lab I've had because everybody was just having fun and getting to talk and stuff. And that's something I miss in this class, is we should do that. Maybe we'll go up to lab and play one day instead of meeting here. Because anyway, so I have this slide here because all those molecules I just showed you are called alkaloids, not anandamide because that one's naturally in us, but THC would be, because I'm pretty sure it's an alkaloid, as are the cannabinoids, the caffeine and theobromine, morphine, and it just means it's a plant compound that contains a nitrogen that's in a ring. And they are what the plant made, so they had a bitter taste to keep the insects away so that nothing would eat them. So it was a natural defense. The thing that's interesting for us is in small quantities, these all actually have significant medicinal impact. And as the whole food, much more. And so there's a quote that Samantha's put in her paper like the past 2 weeks, and I'm not going to remember it. it's something like, let food be thy medicine, so medicine doesn't become thy food. I think that was right. And so it's the idea, if you're eating healthy and doing, and you all know somebody who eats really healthy, but they're not healthy, and it's because they're not keeping the other pillars, and a healthy amount of exercise. So not over exercising, not being a couch potato, and finding that bliss for you in the exercise. So nitrogen. And those of you who had chemistry, there we go. We can be really geeky. Remember, right? The 1s2, 2s2 stuff, the fun stuff. You didn't have me for 104, so you probably don't have good memories of that. But if you're talking about chocolate, theobromine and coffee, or chocolate and coffee go together. I can't have coffee unless it's a mocha. And we will see why, which is these two molecules are almost exactly the same. And so they are just slightly, there's this extra CH3 group here in caffeine. And so they have a lot of similar properties, but they have that bitter taste. That nitrogen and alkaloid makes things have a bitter taste. And it's that bitterness that we all grow into, which is really fascinating. When I go to elementary school, and Elena can comment on this too, how many of the kids tell me they drink coffee? I mean, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, kids would just be like, and the kids do not like coffee. In fact, a lot of my other class, I don't know if anybody in here did it, my other class, a lot of them gave up coffee because they're not drinking coffee. They're drinking Starbucks, Dutch Bros. They're drinking sugar, water. And that's what the kids are. And they say, I can't drink it anymore because without all the additives, it's just super bitter. And so having it as super bitter, it is actually an amazing food. It's that we add stuff. And so like that, unfortunately, if you go out and get a mocha, it's almost impossible to get one that's done without them adding the marshmallows, and cinnamon's a great thing to add. Yeah, you can't find pictures of mochas online anywhere without them adding marshmallows or lots of stuff. And that's not what I mean when I'm saying having coffee and chocolate. It's learning how to make your own, so you can make it with dates. And a lot of you have been like, some of the pictures you're submitting are just beautiful of the foods. And that's what my real goal is for the class, is that you are looking at food differently and recognizing you can make it. So with coffee, or coffee with your chocolate, or tea, these are, most people think about coffee and they think about the caffeine. Coffee actually is amazing. It has a lot of therapeutic. It's used a lot of, and it's actually filled with all these amazing molecules that are the polyphenols, or the flavonoids. Sorry, these are flavonoids. And yeah, you did a talk on caffeine, and actually not caffeine, but on the caffeilic acid, I think is, and these are just different forms, and they have a huge impact and stuff. And so coffee, where you make it yourself and can add, there's no good creamers out there. They're all going to be fake and have stuff, but having a little bit of coffee is not going to be a bad thing. And I have that because I could talk about it. This is green tea. So that's the famous molecule that's in green tea. That's again a polyphenol. And so that is the color green. If I don't think you're having any trouble getting your greens in. I can't do the Roy G. Biv the first week because that would overwhelm. And so we're hopefully at the point where we can play with it. And if you can get all the colors in every day, that's great. Fruit will get you colors, but it is kind of hard to get certain colors. The green shouldn't be hard. But green tea. Now, one of the things that's really interesting, or not so interesting, is some of these green tea powders have caused people to end up having to need liver transplants. And so there's a huge issue with the supplement business because it's not regulated the same as drugs are. And there is just so much stuff out there that you really need to be careful with your source. And so I don't know what the boba tea and stuff where they put, I think it's the tapioca, but those are also just filled with sugar and things. So making your own. And so having green tea in a bag where you make green tea, and then you can add some honey if you need some honey in there, real honey. You're not going to have the issue of having to need a liver transplant. And there's also There's another tea that's from Africa that's really high in another antioxidant and stuff. But make sure when you talk about, for those of you doing vitamins, that you make sure you have a picture of your vitamin, and like especially vitamin A is on my mind right now. You can also compare it to other molecules that have a similar effect and stuff. But I have that picture on there because both of these and all different types of tea are actually what I call guardians of the genome. That's our talk that we have tomorrow after your test, which is that they actually also protect your DNA. And so you can put those in as you're in your color chart. But with that, it's also my segue back into talking about acidosis. So the nitrogen group, they're called alkaloids because they're actually alkaline in nature. And then acidosis, and that slide around that side actually shows you we don't want to be, and it's not that the food in lab is testing acidic, it's that it's having an acidifying effect on your body. Vinegar shows up over there because it is an acid, but vinegar actually is amazing. But anyway, when you eat food that is highly processed, so you're staying away from the rainbow of colors from whole food, of plant food, which is vegetables and fruits. Our tissues, our body processes it. These sugars are devoid in all these minerals that we need, and it starts pulling calcium from our bones. And so the number one cause of bone demineralization is actually eating highly processed food and eating highly animal-based food, so that you're not getting your vitamins and stuff that will help to keep everything in balance. And so you're trying to buffer, your body's trying to buffer it, and you buffer it. The biggest buffering system in your body is your bones. And so your bones become short of that, and so you have osteoporosis, you get all these other issues, so declining health, arthritis, because the calcium then will end up in your joints and you're just filling joints. The thing is the body will start thriving. And you guys are young, so most of you might not notice, but I know in people not much older than you, when they start getting rid of the sugar and stuff, they notice that their joints feel better, or the inflammation starts feeling better and stuff. And cancer absolutely lives on sugar. And then, of course, the drinks, the sugary drinks, which you guys have all moved past. But the cereals, as I talked about, highly processed. I thought this was interesting. So this is here mustard, because mustard is an amazing, so make and pick mustard. Actually, I would love if somebody picked mustard as their spice for the last one. Read the label. There's actually some amazing mustards out there. And so if you can find mustard that's vinegar and mustard seed and a few other spices, which there's tons of it out there. And I think even French makes some like that, but a lot of them actually would add sugar. Ketchup's really hard to find without all the sugar and high fructose corn syrup, but mustard's actually a superfood, and mayonnaise. But there's a lot of these on here that you want to be really careful with your condiments, like the ketchup down there. But the other thing that you want to be careful with is the animal products. But this is, it's about the Mediterranean diet. So almost everybody talks about the Mediterranean diet. And I was laughing yesterday because I was in Lake Oswego with a friend who was going to see a new naturopath. And it was fascinating. It was in Lake Oswego, and I've never seen such a swanky office. And all I could think about is I really miss Dr. Michelle's office, who was very humble and like the real deal. And anyway, this office was extremely swanky, and it was really funny because the walls were black. Like one wall would be black and white. I mean, and all the furniture was black. And I was like, that's funny. All my students were, yesterday I'm in class, and every single student in the class was wearing black. And I'm like, do you guys see? And they all looked around and they all just started laughing. And one girl had on an orange shirt. And I'm like, except for her, or a jacket. And she unzipped her jacket and she was in black underneath. So so I'm grateful you're wearing like a brighter shade of gray. And Sammy's wearing color. Yeah. So we talked about that. All right. So the Mediterranean diet, I was laughing though when I was in Lake Oswego, because in this little complex. There were like 3 restaurants and they all were Mediterranean restaurants. And I was just kind of giggling because I'm like, oh, this is the whole Mediterranean. I'm looking like at what they are advertising and it's all crappy food. I'm like, just because it says it's Mediterranean doesn't mean it's healthy. It's kind of like what we've done to every diet. Vietnamese food was amazing. And you go to a restaurant now, it's Vietnamese, and you're eating crap. It's filled with sugar and salt and fat. And most of them say, no, we don't eat the food that we're serving here. They're eating different. But I don't know, about 10 years ago, it changed. And I just don't go out to eat because you're not going to find good food. But the Mediterranean diet, the true Mediterranean diet, is considered one of the blessings. Like that's how we should be trying to eat, which is, but they're living like their farmland is right there, and they're eating local, and they're eating fresh, and they're eating mostly plant-based. With they would either have local cheeses that they made. The Mediterranean, of course, they're going to have fish, and I don't know. They might have a little bit of other meats, but it's fish. But this is looking at the brains, and again, this projector is hard to see, but I put the arrows in there so you could. And so these areas that they're pointing at, so the temporal lobe here on Mediterranean diet, it's nice and healthy, and on the typical SAD standard American diet, there's these big gaps here. And so your temporal means your ears, it's your hearing and processing of words that you receive. And so if that's being harmed, so this is kind of cool because I've shown the ones where they have the shrinking of the brain, but it's where they actually went, looked at the areas that are really affected. The ventricles is a cavity that allows the transport of cerebral spinal fluid that bathes our spine, right, our nervous system. And you can see on the Western diet, you have these huge gaping holes instead of these really nice amount. And so it is, and then the hippocampus was the one that really blew me away, that like it's just kind of looks like blob here, but this is where learning and memory, these words are key words that have shown up now, which is actually beautiful. They finally show up, that our brain is plastic, meaning, so neuroplasticity is what they say, that it heals, it changes, it's always changing, but it's very vulnerable. But that's true for your whole body, that your body heals, it just sometimes needs help. And right, and so like my friend, he is doing some supplements, but it's been cut back because he needs a serious boost to get back to normal. We're all at a place, sometimes we're not optimal, and then you can make just simple changes, but your brain can heal. There's all these interesting TED Talks, and these guys will come in and talk about how they do brain scans, because now we're able to scan, and a lot of issues have to do with that. So acidosis, eating processed foods, absolutely #1 worst thing, as well as high amounts of animal protein. And so it is one of the things, if you say that you don't eat animal food, they're like, where do you get the protein? That's a misnomer in itself, because we already get twice the protein we're supposed to get. So it's hard to see. It came out really small there, but the recommendation is actually about 50 grams per day. And most Americans are getting at least twice that. And that statistic is pretty old, and so it's probably much higher. But animal protein does acidify the blood. There's no way to get around that fact. Plant protein does not. And that again has to do with when you're getting plant protein, as long as you're not getting it in a capsule, but if you're eating the whole food, you're getting a lot of minerals and vitamins and all these things that are replenishing the blood, as opposed to having to pull stuff out. And it doesn't mean you can't eat animal products. It's the amount that we have been believed to bring. And again, these are those pictures. Alkaline means we want to be at 7.4. It's that nice blood pH. and this is 7.2. So it's a slight difference, but it's enough. And we want our blood to be this beautiful pink color. And number 1 and 2 is meat and sugar. So it pulls calcium out of the bones. I already talked about that. So osteoporosis, fractures. So in older nursing homes, this is one of the biggest issues they have besides the bladder infections is the frequent fractures, which is also related to not getting enough sunlight. But Josie will get to talk about that. And then arthritis, it deposits in the joints, and cancer. Cancer cells can only grow in acidosis. And so if you're able to keep your body in the more alkaline area by eating more fruits and vegetables, the more plants you can eat, the more alkaline your body stays, and the better you feel. And so pretty much every degenerative disease. So some of you watched Forks Over Knives. And that is based off of this study, which might still be one of the largest studies that was done. And this was in the 80s it was done. So Dr. Campbell grew up on a meat dairy farm back during the Depression and stuff. He's still alive. He's in his 90s and still does talks, does TED Talks, still does lectures. And he went to school because he wanted to figure out how to help the animals on his farm to thrive so we could eat them. And he ended up being sent, gets his doctorate and gets sent to the Philippines, and he's going to go there. This is after World War II. And so we've now impoverished the Philippines because of that, like gets into a whole political thing, that they have plenty, they had everything they need, they still do, but we went in and created what we do. Anyway, so he went there to help them, and he was going to show them get a superior source of protein, which was animal protein. And he finally started looking at the data, and he said, this is not making any sense for everything I've learned. And he suddenly was able to flip his perspective because he saw, I think this is now, I don't know what year, maybe it was in the 70s, but he's able to change his perspective. And it was, and some of you talked about it in your paper because you watched it, and I guess they talk about a little bit in the movie, that he actually found a study from India. It was in this very obscure journal, and it really changed how he started doing a lot of his research. But the rats that were fed, and actually you saw it in the humans, the rich people were the ones getting cancer, the kids were getting sick, and the poor people who could not afford to eat meat were not getting cancer and stuff. And then they started looking at rat models, and rats that were fed animal protein as well as the aflatoxin would develop cancer, and the ones that were given like vegetable protein or peanuts or something in the aflatoxin did not develop cancer. And so they then went and look at China. It was done with Oxford, so a guy at Oxford, I can't remember his name ever, and the US, and looking at people. China's diet has changed dramatically in the past 20 years as they have become westernized. There's Kentucky Fried Chickens and stuff, but if you go to rural China, it is still rural. It's like going up into the Himalayas, and they're eating plant-based. It doesn't mean they don't eat meat. They're eating meat where it's like that one steak would feed the whole village as like a flavoring and stuff. But basically in the study, they found the Western diet, the more animal protein you ate, the much higher rates of heart disease and different cancers and stuff. Now, one of the things with the study that they could not foresee is how much food would become processed over those next 30 years, which has become quite fascinating. But he spent a lot of his time now. He's an emeritus scholar, but he talks about just walking around Cornell and people, he got lambasted. If you're wanting to take on meat and dairy, you're not going to get funding. Anybody who's new into research, a young professor, they can't say these things because the meat and dairy industry control so much funding. And so if they want to thrive in research, most papers are going to be tainted because You're not going to say the hand that feeds me. But anyway, he was willing to stand up and say, hey, let's really look at this. The other big thing is your kidneys. So nitrogen, back to nitrogen, and that really brief mention of chemistry. One of the big things that's different from protein, from all the other molecules that the macromolecules, carbohydrates and lipids, is protein has nitrogen. And when you get in more protein than your body's going to need, you still have to get rid of that nitrogen, because to use it for energy, you have to get rid of the nitrogen. Nitrogen is useless as energy. And the only way you get rid of it is your kidneys. And so if you start having a compromise of your kidneys, the true diet is you have to cut out animal products. So there's like these small obscure studies where they do it. And it was these people who were at the point of dialysis. And I think it was either 20 people or 40 people, and 20 in each group. And so the one group, they took them off of animal food and put them on, and they all got off dialysis like within the 3 months. And the other group all just progressed to the point where they were needing more dialysis and stuff. But anyway, that's what kidneys look like with disease and stuff. And it's not pretty. We have 2 of them, and there's interesting stuff where they're being able to regrow organs. And so everything's changing quite fast, but we want to keep the ones that we actually have and keep them healthy. And again, your body can heal, but the excess nitrogen really depletes the kidneys. And you also, if you're not eating vegetables, you are going to be constipated. So Stephen eats a lot of meat. He's gone through changes and stuff, but he also is eating a huge amount of vegetables. That is not true for most people who are eating meat. Most people who are eating meat are eating it on a bun that's highly processed with like a piece of iceberg lettuce, which is devoid of all nutrients and stuff, with fries that are deep fried in oil, and sprinkled with salt that no longer has iodine. But it is the average American, how often they have a bowel movement is really sad. If you go to a naturopath or a true chiropractor or acupuncture, I remember when I was in acupuncture school, and that was one of the first things they asked us, like, how often do you have a bowel movement? And I'm like, oh, what kind of question is this? I don't know. And then I realized why, as we're going through the school, that it's a huge indication. And so if you go to alternative, that's like a huge thing, because that is an indication of how things are flowing. And the issue is ketosis, which is a whole nother thing that there are people who are obsessed with. But keto acid, it does acidify your blood, and cancer loves that. Cancer cells, absolutely. And then the exposure to the toxins and stuff, the antibiotics. So we've talked about before. So if you're going to eat animal protein, you need to make sure you're getting it from a source that is, if you can get a family farm or something, which there are actually tons of places around. The amount, you're actually exposed to much more pesticides. So people are like, all the pesticides on strawberries and stuff. You can clean your strawberries. These animals are eating huge amounts of pesticides, and it accumulates in the organs that you are eating. And that was like a kind picture of injecting cows. And it suppresses your immune system. So what enhances your immune system is the rainbow, which is why your teacher's still wearing the rainbow hat, which is fruits and vegetables. So yeah, you want to stay away from processed food. The other thing that acidifies your blood, I don't know if you noticed there, is the prescription medication. So, and that's a picture of Mother Earth. I think it's on the next page, that Mother Gaia, some of you watched some of those documentaries, the impact that our factory farming is having on the planet, the deforestation of the whole rainforest is for growing cattle to make the hamburgers at McDonald's. So, right, and so you can find tons of information there that it's the #1 cause of the change, climate change and stuff. Right. So that's just another picture. I can't remember if I showed this picture before. So this is the healthy alkaline blood, which eating mostly fruits and vegetables, carrots, that's what this hair is. And so they're lovely looking, but it's this one, the immune cell. So your blood cells also are white blood cells. And it's just like the immune system. And he should also be covered with sugar and stuff. And this is highly processed meat, which is going to be the worst kind of meat you can have. And that's what people are buying. If you look in the store, they're not buying healthy choices. If you're going to make the choice to eat animal products, you need to buy high quality. And people are like, well, I can't afford that. But you can afford to be in a perpetual state of sickness, which doesn't make sense. So if you're going to eat meat, you got to make that switch to eating high quality. But the other thing that's in there is the fungus that is growing in this blood, which is, yeah. And these red blood cells, like, look at the shapes of them. It's insane. So you want to keep yourself where you're in a healthy place. Actually, what's missing from this, I just realized, is the #1 cause of acidosis is actually stress, and that continual state of being in stress. Stress actually acidifies your body, and also over exercising because of the breakdown of your muscles when you over exercise. So there is that balance. You absolutely need to exercise. Not exercising is going to cause issues too, but it's learning how to deal with the stress. And so all of you took on the Mindful May as your change for May. This is, I actually never read his book. I just heard a talk, and he's very charismatic. But again, he didn't grow up on meat and dairy. He is a medical doctor and absolutely believed you should eat animal products. He was actually a cardiologist. I don't know if he's still a cardiologist. And then he went and got all of his blood work done because he turned 50, and he just sat there and he took 6 months off work because he's like, I'm a heart attack waiting to happen. Like, it's going to happen any day now, because his numbers were awful. And he just started researching everything. And again, it was the flip that changed his perspective that, right. If it's this is the one, the hip fractures incidence. So for women, but heart disease, and then whatever kind of cancer you want to look at, and animal protein, as well as highly processed, especially highly processed animal protein, which is what most people are getting. So if you're going to get ground meat, you want to get it from somebody who's making it themselves. Yeah, I was at a potluck the other day, and so Joey wasn't able. The guy is trying to compensate for Joey that he doesn't eat meat, so he said he would make burritos. And then I sent him a message, said Joey's not going to be able to come, and so you can make whatever you want. And so he said, well, I put turkey meat in, so they're still vegetarian. I'm like, he didn't say turkey meat. He said it has turkey, it has ground turkey. And I'm like, but turkey's meat. And he's like, it's not red meat, so it doesn't count. And I'm like sitting there going, I really don't understand this philosophy that we're going through. He was, I think, joking, but I don't know if he was or not. And so it is that this group of people are beautiful and lovely and stuff, but they're missing, they're all taking medication. They all spend a lot of time talking about the doctors and stuff they go to, and oh, my surgery just got put off by a week. And I'm like, let's see what you could do for the next week with your diet. But you get these blank looks. So it's baby steps, taking baby steps for people. So just, this is why, because this is how most Americans are eating. And some of you may be like, you know what, that's how I was eating 6 weeks ago. And again, my goal with this class It's not that you can take a blood sample and say, look at this, look at this, look at this. And again, these chiropractors and stuff that I'm going to, they're not doing that. They're like, those numbers, they're based off of a young, healthy male. They took an average of a whole bunch of 20-year-old men. And that's where these numbers come from when they're like your iron's out of range and stuff. There is always some differentiation. And there's a time and place for that. Because if your iron's really off, absolutely. But if you're going to keep eating this, you're going to just keep getting Band-Aids put on you with more and more medication. I was telling my class last night story, and I can't remember where I read it from or heard it. But it was a guy, so you know what a vice is in the garage? Or in a shop. I know you do because you work with that. But you put something in there and you turn it and it holds it in place. So you've seen it, it's in your garage, your dad has one, and holds something in place. And so basically he's working and he gets the vice stuck on his thumb. He goes to the doctor. It just goes with the story. So he's walking around. He has this huge metal thing just like pushing on his thumb. And he's walking around with it. He's like, my thumb really hurts. And he goes to the doctor and he has this huge, and he says to the doctor, my thumb has pain. And the doctor says, here's some pain pills. He's like, thank you. So he goes home. Doctor doesn't do anything about like this huge thing, which trying to help my friend, I'm seeing this, that, so he comes back a week, 2 weeks later and says, well, the pain, I don't feel the pain anymore because I'm on pain meds, but now I'm constipated. And the doctor's like, oh, here's another prescription. And basically every 2 weeks he shows up back at the doctor saying, well, good, now my bowels are moving, but now I'm having this issue. And the whole time he's walking around with this vice on his hand, which is obvious that anybody can see. And so this is, again, hopefully, and it's being an inspiration to people. And so what I do when I go to the potluck, rather than trying, because I'm like, where can I begin with these people, right? I make a healthy salad and make my own salad dressing for it. And I bring that, and the one guy even did, he complimented, he's like, wow, that's a really good salad. And so it's bringing a healthy choice to those things. So one, that you have something to eat, because that was the only thing I could eat. But one of them actually brings fruit now, and they bring it every time. They bring a big plate of fruit because they know that's the only thing Joey and I will eat that they bring. And then they still bring the other one, which is interesting. It's fascinating because they'll bring macaroni and cheese. So they're like, well, Joey doesn't eat meat. And I'm like, so Joey and I have been having a conversation because I'm like, but that mac and cheese they're bringing is so unhealthy for you. And so they're like, well, no, it's Annie's mac and cheese. And I'm like, but still, and they're like, and it's made with rice flour. And I'm like, it's still this highly processed, like that doesn't make it healthy. So just be aware of that. If it's coming in a package, making it yourself is different. And it's not that you can never eat pasta and stuff, but pasta is not necessarily a healthy option. This is interesting because I don't know why the bowl of peanuts is there, except that most peanuts that you buy nuts, and some of you have talked about this in your little essays and stuff, is it's really hard to find raw ones unless you go to the bulk area and buy them. And peanuts, there's a peanut shortage, and I'm not fully sure why. It's being diverted to be used for something else, and I can't remember. Joey is the one who found out why. But for a while, you couldn't get peanuts or peanut butter unless you bought it in the jar, and then it had oils added. So if you buy a jar of peanuts, it's not going to be only peanuts. It's going to have peanut oil or corn flour or safflower or it's going to have like 5 different types of oils, or edible vegetable oil. That's my favorite one because it makes me worry then what's the regular vegetable oil. Again, we've talked about this, and this number is actually worse after COVID. And again, this meat is very different. You can eat healthy meat, but it should be 42% of your diet, although it might be for Stephen. Is it 40? Is it 50%? Are you like a 50-50? But the difference there is absolutely a 51% is not there, and this expands. And one of the things that's been really cool that Stephen shared with me is he absolutely wasn't doing fruit. And then he's like, oh, I'm going to try it the first week. And he ended up doing it for his healthy change. And he was amazed. He's like, wait, my body tolerates it now. And so it is something as you're trying to find your optimum, and everybody is different. And especially like he's going into being a nutritionist, is recognizing that what you do is not going to work for everyone. And I've gone through, and so like I'm able to tolerate not doing animal products. I don't do them, and it actually wasn't for health reasons that I got rid of the animal products. It's how I teach it, but I did it for other reasons. And then something I wrote to somebody, and I don't know which class, but the yogis, which you're going back to the original medicine, Ayurvedic, it is fruit and vegetables because of the vibrancy and the vibrations and stuff. But the chronic systemic acidosis, because it's highly processed. And so back to like what Stephen was saying, he's eating this is all fruits and vegetables in color. And his animal products do not look like this at all. Because that is almost all highly processed meat, which is going to be not good at all. That's Joey before he became like eating broccoli and stuff. I've shown this picture before, but it's worth sharing again that this guy went around different cultures, and he continues to do this, and buys the family a week worth of groceries. And it is these people that we consider the poor people are eating by far the healthiest diet. And it is the thing that scares me again is in these cultures that they're saying this is progress, this is Mexico, and the amount of soda that is up there. And those of you who come from like Hispanic families, you've probably commented to me already, and you know that the amount of soda is just insane. But we do have a nice array of fruits and vegetables. And I'm pretty sure that's Australia. That used to be almost all meat. And so there's fruits and vegetables, but the part that really scares me more is the change in that picture. You see back on the window, they have all that, whatever, sugar beverages. And so giving up soda and switching to a different sugar is not going to be healthy. But those that I was commenting that they're now saying might be the unhealthiest thing is the processed cereals. And I read, and this was a guy, and he was, I think he was vegan, and he said probably one of the most unhealthiest thing we did was creating the breakfast cereals that it'd be better to eat. You do want to eat like your grandparents, which is get local eggs. Yeah. And so it all also ties in with the free radicals that we've talked about. So ROS are radical oxygen species, which are important, but we just create too much. And then the antioxidants, some of you are going to be talking about because vitamins A, C, and E are like over glorified as these antioxidants that you're going to take a pill, but in whole foods, you're getting all those polyphenols, which are super antioxidants and flavonoids and stuff. And so if you're going to eat like that, it is cute, but it's cured meats, and antioxidants are just going to be the color, the rainbow. You're getting all different antioxidants in that diversity, as well as the fiber that feeds your microbiome that helps to protect you. But that's also going to keep you in that place of acidosis, and we want that balanced place of alkalosis. And so I don't know when I made this slide, because these numbers are always changing. So I think I showed this at some point before, maybe not in here. The heart disease always gets the #1 spot, and still does. And some places they combine heart with stroke because they are both related. It's just which arteries are more vulnerable, and cancer. And these account for just such a huge amount. And you have other ones. The thing that is missing from this, and I have not been able to find, it was just a cute picture, but I haven't been able to find one that shows it correctly. Does anybody know what is missing? What should be the #7 cause of death, I think, is doctor created. So from medication. So the amount of people that end up hospitalized for medication, and then how many of those actually die from it. And so I had it, I don't think it's on this one, because I think I know where I'm going with this slide. And that is about diabetes. And that's why I wasn't sure, but the one that's missing, and I'm pretty sure it's either right before or right after diabetes, is doctor created, and that is incorrect prescription. So my mom beat the odds twice that she did end up hospitalized for a week twice because of medication. And some other people shared comments about that too, about people, but that, yeah. But it is diabetes. And when we talk about diabetes, and these numbers are old and they became much worse with COVID, and they continue to be because everybody's still in this perpetual state of eating fast food. It's still insane, the lines at these places, but they're still just huge numbers. The amount of adults in this country and around the world who have diabetes, and it's almost always type 2 diabetes, which is completely a lifestyle, which is exercise, movement. You have to be careful with exercise. And so when you guys are all going into some kind of healthcare, so whether you're working with pregnant women in labor or delivery, or working as nutrition and stuff, you have to be careful with the word exercise, because when you say the word exercise, like, I'm not worried about you guys, but most people, the thought they have in their head is going to aerobics, lifting like 300 pounds, running 10 miles a day and stuff. And that's going to turn people off faster than saying you need to eat more vegetables. Well, actually, eating more vegetables turns people off. And so it's trying to teach them that let's add some color. Yeah, one meal a day, and then it expands, as you guys have shown. But it is just starting to walk. Park your car a little bit further and walk. You just have to move. And one of your classmates had talked about that, like with COVID and everything, and every single one of you talked about your diet became crap during COVID. Isn't that interesting? We were all being exposed to a virus. It's still out there, it's still going around, but it's mellowed out. And but we all started eating much worse. And it was the spear mentality and stuff. But diabetes is absolutely this highly processed fast food. Type 1 diabetes is different, but it's also very interesting because type 1 is where you're dependent on insulin. That is an autoimmune disease. And so that also should be talked about as a lifestyle, because what happened that your immune system starts attacking something. So whether it's some kind of painful thing like chronic fatigue, it's like they still don't know what that is, but that's that somehow your body's out of balance. And this belief that once you're on insulin, you're on it for life, that medical doctors push on you, that is not true. Everything can heal if you give it the right environment. The biggest thing is the vibrations in your thoughts of that positivity and supporting and stuff. But this estimate, I'm pretty sure it's 2030 now that we're going to hit the 50%. And I think it's actually moved even closer. And I don't know, though, if we've moved past the 40% of US adults are diabetic. That number is the amount of people who are diabetic who die from heart disease. That you have a much higher chance of having heart issues and stroke and stuff. And again, the number of young people having stroke, like in their 20s and 30s, is just really heartbreaking. That I think has to do with this, the high amount of processed at Starbucks. That's the weirdest phenomenon to me of all time. Fast food, that you guys, and a lot of you have written that to me, that's how you hang out with your friends, is you go to McDonald's or Burger King or Chick-fil-A or something. And how did we become like that? And I do agree, you can have tea, you don't have to have coffee, or, right, learning how to drink black coffee. But if you don't have diabetes, your chance of having heart disease is much lower. The thing about diabetes, type 2 diabetes also, and like my mom, she has actually, only time she was pre-diabetic was for 1 week, and that was right before she ended up in the hospital, and that was because she was put on steroids. And like within 5 days, she had there are serious side effects when you're put on steroids. And she had every single one, including makes you diabetic. And she's never been, but she's always been overweight her whole life and probably obese at times. And one of my dearest close friends and kindest person is obese and not diabetic at all. And so there is the one that is more, the ones that end up with the heart disease and die are the thin people, because they don't realize that this is going on in them. Because there's also a relationship to stress and diabetes, because cortisol creates all these things. And then the medications they put you on have some serious side effects. And so you want to always research having that capacity. And type 2 diabetes, absolutely, stroke and heart disease, all these things by healthy attitude first, and then making conscientious choices. Something I talked about with my classes yesterday is, so I'm taking this meditation course. So every 2 weeks, I'm like so far behind, but they're so kind. They're like, take it at your own pace. And so last term, when I had really small classes and only had 2, I still have small classes, but I now have 4. My ability to stay with it. Plus they get more and more and you keep building on it. So right now it's these mindful exercises you're supposed to do every day. And there's 38 of them. And I'm like, really? I'm supposed to remember 38, but I think I can do 19 without having to watch the video. But you're breathing with the exercises, but the purpose of the exercise is not that, okay, I'm stretching my body, I'm going to side, that as you're doing the side stretch, you're really breathing into that muscle and bringing that awareness, conscientiousness. So it's very different from the exercise and the aerobics that we think of at the gym, that you're doing it in an extremely mindful way. So every step that you're taking is more mindful, because most of our movement is extremely unmindful, right? I don't know when we became like that, but we really go through just emotions. Like class is over and you all just put your books in and you suddenly become mindless. And so you do, right? And in the morning you get up and and you make your coffee. You want to get up, and before you get out of bed, you take that moment and you set your intention for the day, and that slows everything down. So as you go through, and it might be that you have to get up a little bit earlier, which you're like, I'm not getting up a little bit earlier, but having that time where you can be slower and more mindful in the morning. Or somebody talked with my class last night, start doing the dishes. Like your family will be so happy. And it's actually a problem I have, because that's what Joey does. And so I don't get to do the dishes. I'm the cook and he does the dishes. And so it works. We have this perfect relationship. But watching him do the dishes, I wish I could take a video. It drives people crazy because he's so slow at doing them, but he's so mindful. He's just like in this place. I mean, it's like, really, if you can get past like, why is he so slow, and just really watch it, it's like he's completely in the moment. There's no rush. He's just, and it's interesting, when I go on my silent retreat, I was thinking about this, because I always you have to pick a job, so everybody's helping out. And I always pick one in the kitchen, because I'm like, I think, yeah. And so my favorite is if I get there and nobody's picked the veggie chopper, because I'm like, I get to be in the kitchen, I get to cut vegetables, I'm so happy. And like, I'm like, am I supposed to be the one cleaning the bathroom, because I hate cleaning bathrooms? Would that make me a better little yogi? And I'm like, no, actually, I want to be in a place where I can be chopping the vegetables. But I had dishwashing last time, and I had a person with me. And I was thinking about this, and I'm like, there's this rush, let's get done with the dishes so we have more time to go for a meditative walk before we have our next sitting session. And I'm like, this makes no sense. And so I was really bummed, because I signed up for the wrong meal for dishes. And I'm trying to get over that, because the person gets to do the breakfast dishes, they don't have to do it with another person. And so I'm like, well, then you would get to be very slow and mindful. And I also got stuck doing the bathrooms and could not stand it. It's like my least favorite thing to do. But anyway, finding that of saying, instead of being like, I don't like to do it, can you do it slower and more mindfully, or everything you do during the day? Or when somebody cuts you off, or you see somebody only has that 2 things of groceries, of saying, sure, You can go in front of me. The problem when you do that is then the next person only has two, and the next person, and you're just standing there like, I'm never going to get to go. But anyway, can all this be reversed? Absolutely. So weight loss is a huge thing. And again, that's many faceted. So exercise, everybody talks about exercise and diet. And again, it's finding what works for them. So to believe that you would all eat how I eat is like not practical, or for Steven to believe you guys would eat like he eats, but it took each of us a time to get there. But with losing weight, it is mostly up here, and having that mindset and that they find that place. And so it is being active. So going for a walk, they have shown so much that going for a walk, and it can be just 10 minutes because it builds up. And so like I said, one student here was saying he could only exercise for 10 minutes. And then after this month with some of the healthy changes, he absolutely can do an hour with no issues at all. And everybody knows, talked about this. They talk about how it is that suddenly you can do more and more. And so it is taking it slow initially. And again, rather than saying vegan, because that to me is kind of a weird term, because they often will eat extremely unhealthy, that you want to be a whole food plant-based. So you're eating real food, not from a box, and that at least half of your plate should be veggies. Yeah, and to say no meat at all would be, most people would be like, whoa, that's too drastic. And again, there are some people, the Dalai Lama apparently, he eats meat every other day. He has a joke about it, so he's like, I'm 50% vegan. People who meditate often want to get off of animal products for the spiritual reason. But if you think about this, when you say cutting out dairy or cutting out whatever, I mean, now it should be cutting out processed food, cutting out Starbucks. That's so drastic. In 1964, that was when the Surgeon General said they absolutely, and I'm pretty sure you would all agree with me that smoking is not a healthy thing. It doesn't mean everybody who smokes is going to get cancer, but a high enough percentage, and it's much higher, like it's cancer. And the number, oh, I don't have the number there. I had it on a previous, I think in the first week. But the number of people who smoke has actually dropped by more than half. It's like at a quarter of what it was, which is hard to believe walking around, because the number of people who smoke, and vaping is just as bad. And the studies are actually out there how bad vaping is for you. But when you go to another country, so to Europe or Asia, you suddenly realize how lucky we are here, because they smoke everywhere. In China, cigarettes are like a penny each, because the government, there's theories why, I don't know if this is true, but the government wants everybody to get lung cancer because they don't want to pay for you to have a long life, because it's mandatory retirement at a certain age, but it's not mandatory for everybody, just very ordinary person. But anyway, alcohol also is really cheap there. And so that was a question, but there's always this argument, and my other class kind of are angry about this, and they're like, no, we're omnivores and stuff, which actually doesn't work if you actually look into it. So carnivores, all carnivores walk on 4 feet. I'm pretty dang sure. And it also has to do with the intestine length. So there is a ratio from the opening to the other opening. So from your mouth to your anus, and how long the digestive system is. And our digestive system is actually quite long. So 20 some feet is your small intestines. So we dissected frogs last week, and the boys disemboweled their frog in under 5 minutes. I have a picture of the boys versus the girls, and the girls were very carefully, the girl found a fly in the stomach of her frog, which is really cool. Anyway, the boys did pull out the intestines, and I made them measure it. But anyway, our intestines are much too long. It's a ratio, and I can't remember the ratio. The weirdest thing was, because I was debating if I was going to show this slideshow. This is actually a month ago, then I was on a bike ride, and this talk came on my YouTube. because I listen to a lot of yoga, not like modern westernized yoga, but from India and stuff. And it was this guy from over 100 years ago, one of the yoga teachers would be sitting there and you'd all be like, oh, that's a little bit weird. But he actually was talking about all this stuff, like over 150 years ago, 200 years ago, the book is, was totally blew me away. But also it has to do with the pH of our stomach is actually much lower than the pH of the stomach of your dog or your cat. And my animals eat meats because I'm not a fan of supplementing. And so animals, if you make them vegetarian, which you absolutely can, they actually, you have to supplement them. So there are supplements people who do become vegetarian have to take. However, my understanding is we've so depleted our planet, everybody has to supplement B12. So it's actually you can't get enough from any source anymore. And that they found that people are meat eaters. So I don't know if they're eating the meat like you are, but most meat is people eating meat or eating like the fast food or like ground meat and stuff that, yeah, and vitamin D and the DHA and stuff, which is also devoid in most fish now too. But, and then the biggest one has to do with our teeth. And so in case you've never seen this picture, and that was the other thing that blew me away. And he actually, this guy in this book that's like 150 years old goes through a whole talk, but this picture, that carnivores have the things that hang down. The omnivores, we don't actually look like this either. And we definitely don't look like an herbivore. And so I would never say that we're that. That we're actually classified as it's called a frugivore, which means we just eat fruits. And so anyway, it has to do also with the carnivores. They don't actually have any molars at all because they have no need for the grinding and stuff. The omnivores have both, but there's something different about their molars, which you can see in there. And I'm not a dental person in any way, but it's just something.
Is that a bear?
I don't know which one.
The second one, the omnivore, kind of looks like a bear.
It does. Which they would be omnivores because they definitely, yeah, they eat beautifully. I saw a grizzly in Alaska once, and it was a pleasant. And your microbiome, and so all of it have very different microbiotas, but it's estimated we have about 10% the microbiota that we had 100 years ago. So unless you go to areas that have not had the westernization, right, 10%. It's not that half of it's been destroyed, and it's diversity that brings it to it. And so it probably has to do with why Stephen has found he needs to eat meat is his microbiome is different from mine, whereas I seem to do much better. And so there was this book that came out, and there's some people who still love this book, that's Eat Right for Your Type. And it was looking at blood types and put everybody in basically 4 categories. And I just kind of laughed at the book when it first came out. And he has really good points. And the reason why those things work is every single one of them agrees you got to get rid of process. And so if that's what you do for the people in your life, your clients, whatever they are, is to get them off of process and get them to eat more cooking at home. Because when you start cooking at home, you also find that time to slow down, and it's much more fun. Like so many of you have said, like you're cooking with your mom or something, and how much fun you're having doing it, and making the food for other people. But yeah, your microbiome is what feeds you. And so by feeding them, and they absolutely have to have fiber. So if it is somebody who wants to eat meat or finds that their body absolutely needs meat, it probably has a lot to do with some of these, but they have to have the vegetables. They have to have fiber in whole food. So again, the fiber in supplements, you've heard me say this so many times, it will help you to poop so you have bowel movements, but it doesn't feed your microbiome. And that's where fruit and legumes. And so it's also for me to remind about half of you have a late assignment. Do you know you didn't turn in?
I turned it in last night. and I have
Okay,
one
did
after
you
mine
just-
told me I didn't do yet.
Okay. I thought it was weird. I was just like looking at the grade book for something else and I'm like,
It's a
what?
little hectic, that's all.
Okay. No, I figured that. And so, but if you could all, even, I know there's a couple of you have everything in, just look at your grade book and see if there's anything missing from before, because all these things are going to get made into zeros. There is a late fee and stuff if you're turning stuff in late. And so please get this stuff in because I have to move on also. And some of you I've talked to. But the question always becomes, where are you going to get your protein? Because you do need protein. And actually, if you're eating a good balanced diet, even if it's whole food, plant-based, you're going to get plenty of protein. That gets into a whole nother thing. So, but soy is a wonderful thing. And I was going to ask you, you said, because there are some people who really don't do well with beans. There's certain beans that everybody has a bean that's like, there's no way I can't eat pinto beans or I can't eat black beans or something. But can you do edamame?
Yeah.
Okay. Because everybody seems to be able to do this and you can buy it in the freezer. I like it in the pod, because it's just so fun steaming them and then popping them out of the pod into your mouth. It's like the most wonderful thing. And if they're frozen, they don't have other crap put on them and stuff. But you can also buy them frozen where they're already shelled. They're gonna cost more because you're getting like the pure, but it's like amazing to put into stir fries and stuff. I think they're better for you than peas. Peas are really high in fiber. Peas are amazing. Almost everybody can eat peas, but you have to be careful because peas can cause some people to really spike their blood glucose. I learned this when I was like possibly middle school. I can't remember. My dad was overweight, went to the doctor just for a checkup. And the doctor said, if you want to see your kids graduate from high school, you have to make changes. And my dad was somebody who he could just, boom, make a change like that, as opposed to me who sits there going, but there's chocolate. I need the chocolate. And like, see, I don't even remember my dad being overweight like that. My mom could not make the changes. But basically they had 3 children and then you're working and you're taking care of the 3 children and you've all seen it in every culture and stuff, and people gain weight because they're and as you get older and stuff. But it was his triglycerides were like off the chart. So it's before the whole cholesterol thing, it's before all the medications and stuff. And so the doctor said, yeah, do it with diet. And so I remember sherbet showed up in our house and we were like, what is that? Because like now, I mean, now it'd be, I don't know what it's called, but the one thing he could not eat was peas. There were certain things that were forbidden. And it's that peas, probably because somehow the starch in them gets digested really fast by some people and they get this huge influx. And there they weren't looking at diabetes or anything because that's all been a more recent fad because it's an issue, but it was, then his body was storing it as fat because he was getting this huge influx. I think it's all a balance too. And that's when food just was starting to get processed. And so finding the balance, but these guys are beautiful. I've mentioned before there, you can get fresh tofu here in town. And if you have never gone there, so Bowie is the one I go to that you can Google tofu. So it's BUI. And you just Google it, but it's over, I think 74th and Gleason. It's not on Gleason, the parking lot is. But there's like this little Vietnam spot there. And anyway, it's like this little store and you walk in and they're making the tofu behind. And they have another one now over in Beaverton, but they make the tofu pretty much for every Asian restaurant in town. So find the time to go. The early in the morning, it's all the Asians are in there buying all the tofu. And then at lunch, the line's out the door and around and stuff. But it's like 70 cents for a block of tofu and it's fresh. And tofu keeps pretty well, but you can also buy salad, like most people are in there buying like their lunch because you can buy different things, but you won't go back to buying the tofu in the store because that tofu doesn't have any taste. Theirs is just heavenly. You can also buy theirs deep fried. which some people absolutely love. And I just smile and like, you're like taking something that was healthy and then you're eating it fried in who knows what kind of oils. Anyway, soy, again, we see the polyphenols, very specific, these two. And these have a shape similar to estradiol. And estradiol is one of there's 3 estrogens in our body. And this is the one that's related with breast cancer. It's really a ratio, but they help to keep our estradiol levels low. The problem is with soy is this protein is really, the protein in it's really wonderful, and it's easy to isolate the protein. And then you'll find soy protein isolate, anything that's processed either has whey protein isolate or soy protein isolate or both in them. And it's when we've isolated the protein, it changes. And that is where soy suddenly has a bad name. Eating it as a whole food, so as the bean or as the tofu or tempeh, which is fermented, and miso, that is very different. But these are isoflavones, apparently not polyphenols. I don't know why. Oh, because sorry, they're not OHs, so they have the ketones, so they call them the flavones. And you get to see these crazy pictures, and maybe you all have a picture so you feel more sciencey when you talk about your thing. But most of these don't make a lot of sense to me, other than to say there is a relationship with DNA as well as our mitochondria with these 2 isoflavones. And they actually, what they're doing, what the picture's trying to say, again, having some words for prompts for you. But you guys ideally will practice so you'll know your whole talk, so it's up to you, that they activate the genes that suppress tumors. And so they are considered a superfood as the whole food for helping different cancers, especially the female cancers, because of the similarity in shape to the estradiol. So that's why I call them the guardians of the genome. And there is this whole thing. One of the talks, you get a choice this week, they talk, maybe not, this word methylation. So those of you who took chemistry with me, there is that you're not as afraid of these words, but this is a big buzzword now, and it is methylation of proteins, methylation of DNA. Actually has this, is the epigenetic at the molecular level, the shift that is happening, but is really at the vibrational level that it is. And, you know, find fun cartoons, personalize your talk so that people laugh. You want to make people laugh. You want to make people joyful. And when you come in next week, make sure when you're watching the people that you have bright, like make it your goal that this is going to be my 2-hour mindful meditation time. I'm going to be the ideal audience. I'm just going to be really alert and pay attention. You can doodle, draw beautiful pictures. Some of you do when you submit your notes. Have these beautiful doodles and stuff. Mine do. If you saw mine, I doodle all over. So if you see me writing down stuff, it's usually I'm doodling to help me keep listening, because you can listen with your ears. And so, well, you do listen with your ears. Anyway, but smiling, it makes a big difference because people are nodding and writing down questions. So I made my other class do this, and I kind of forgotten here. And so we didn't have as much questions going on, except for the ones who've been trained by me before. So you're all going to be doing this because it's part of your grade. You're going to have to ask on each day a certain number of questions. And I do keep track. But as the person's presenting, so we'll say Stephen's up here presenting about liver, that you're writing down the specific question you have for him. So when he gets done, you have your question in front of you. Because if you don't write it down, you're not going to remember what your question was. And it can be anything like, why did you pick this subject, or what was, but often depending on what tangent, like you could all do iodine as your presentation. Nobody's picked iodine, by the way. So if you start doing your research this weekend, when it's a rainy weekend again, and you're like, I really want to do iodine or something else, shoot me an email. I will respond to the email and say, well, actually somebody picked that one, but actually calcium and iodine, neither of them have been picked yet. So, and some of like the E vitamins and vitamin K. So there's lots of room to switch. And yeah, anyway, so there's a thing with methylation and demethylation to silence and activate, and that's the whole epigenetic shift that happens. I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button. So if you do something like that. And so this is a student from my other class did one of the best presentations I've had. And part of that had to do with his personality. And then I read his paper, and I wasn't going to because I'm so far, I have like a bunch of papers and I have to write a test today and go on a bike ride because the sun's coming out. And that's the most important thing, is to enjoy, well, yeah, there's sun out there. Anyway, his paper was completely his personality, and like the introduction just like sucked me in. Like I just saw one word as I was flipping through something, and I'm like, oh, he just hooked me. Like, and it just like just kept reading through it. He's actually from Africa, and just something with his personality. He just, so he talked about, and so that's why I have credit for him. So the quinoa slides came from him, and his talk was much better. But I love this picture, and I wanted to talk about it for two reasons. Because one, you got the rainbow going on here. I had to rearrange it because you didn't have them in the right order. Other than blue, which is almost impossible to find in nature, you can find quinoa in all different colors. Quinoa is a whole grain. And it's a really good source of protein. And so the reason why he picked the topic was how he started the paper. When he was at another university, at Concordia, which is closed now, and he was taking a health class. He remembered the first day the teacher made some comment, and one of the comments was about you don't have to eat animal food to get protein. And he just like his hand shot up without him thinking or something. I forget what it was they said, and she just said, basically, she said one word, which was quinoa, and other things. She was talking about, I'm not doing it justice. But anyway, he ended up wanting to do quinoa, and that's how you say the name. And it's very different from 20 years ago. You couldn't find quinoa anywhere. It was almost impossible to find quinoa. We didn't have all the whole food places set up, well, Whole Paycheck, that's an extremely expensive store. But you can find quinoa everywhere now. And there's a picture that most of us think of. So I find there's different flavors with the different colors, but it's the same with lentils. You can find lentils in all different colors. And to me, the brown ones, I think it's a color thing. I cannot stand the taste of the brown lentils. There are these like pinkish peach colored lentils. And it was actually when Pimba came here, and it was 30 years ago, and we could not find them anywhere because he could not stand the lentils here. And I'm like, what do you mean? And then once we found them, and now you can find these pink ones everywhere has them. They have so much more flavor, and there's probably carotenoids in them, and the green split peas and all of that. And so that was the other comment I was going to make. Like for Stephen and anybody else who's like says they had trouble with digesting certain legumes, but again, green beans, peas, soy, peanuts are all legumes that most people can handle. Lentils, and I personally, it's red beans that I cannot. I don't like them at all. I don't like the taste and stuff, unless they're the little original Adzuki ones, which are tinier. But anyway, that's quinoa, and you can make all sorts of recipes from stews to salads with it. And it's got like the perfect, I'm pretty sure, it was a question you'd asked me, Stephen. I'm pretty sure he says in the paper, I think quinoa is one of the few plant foods that might be actually a whole protein. So it's something that Stephen brought up, and I am remiss because I forgot to mention it earlier, was animal protein is, so there are 20 amino acids that build our proteins. That's not a true statement, but that's the myth that we keep putting out there. There's 20 amino acids that are the main, like account for probably 98% of the protein, the amino acids, if we're gonna like micromanage this whole thing. And there are, I think it's 9. The number is different for infants, for children, and for adults, but we'll just go with 9 of them are essential, meaning our body can't change an amino acid. The other ones, those 9 amino acids, you can change it into another one, like a methyl group gets added and it becomes a different amino acid. And so vegetables are never complete protein, meaning they don't have all the amino acids that are essential. So if you're only eating broccoli, you're going to become deficient in certain amino acids. This is the whole thing with beans and rice. It turns out every culture combined food correctly without having to know the amino acids in it. So if you eat beans and rice, you're getting all of, and they don't have to be in the same meal. And I can't remember all the different ones, all the combinations. I used to know it, and then I'm like, it doesn't matter as long as you're getting a variety. Quinoa, animal protein, however, because it's an animal, you do get a complete profile of all the essentials in there. I think quinoa also does, though. It might be the only plant food, but I might be wrong on that. But I love this picture because it has a rainbow. It also has legumes in there. But you can make stews, you can make salads, you can make all sorts of stuff. See, that one also has the chickpeas with the quinoa, and so it's tiny. And there's a couple things with it. So it was, the word means the mother grain, and I'm pretty sure it is an Incan word. I don't know if that's the correct way to say it. So we all have one word in Inca language, the ancient Inca language, which is Peru. So Peru is like in here, yeah, the Andes Mountains. So the Incas, as well as the Sherpas, live at high elevation, and this grows. And so that's like the only place on the planet I absolutely want to see. But then COVID happened. So that's Machu Picchu, which was the Incas created it, and it's way over tourist trap now. And so I don't know if I can go there because there's too many tourists. And especially the times of year you want to go, because that's all created to see the sun at the equinoxes and the solstice, and the sun does something really special. Anyway, so that's created like that. But this is like a mock-up of them doing the ceremony and dressed up like the Incans. And so they had took over the whole country, and when the Spaniards came, they thought that there was gold everywhere, but there was only gold and silver up here. And so that's why Argentina is called Argentina, because it means silver. There's absolutely no silver in Argentina. There's tons of silver up here. Anyway, another quick thing, since I have the map, Chile is this interesting country. I don't know my geography very well, but it's just this whole coast is almost all Chile. And it's something like 90% of our fruits and vegetables have to go through Chile. It's like this astronomically crazy amount on the Pacific coast of how much stuff goes through Chile to come up to us. And it's because it's this whole coastline. Anyway, they lived in the Andes Mountains, and that's where the llamas or alpacas come from, at high elevation, and quinoa probably grew there. And it was part of their ceremony. It was part of their food, the stews and everything. And they called it the mother grain because it was the perfect food. And sorry, I have to have my mouth facing a certain way. And this is apparently like this porridge or something that they would make. And right, for when they would say hello to the sun for the longest day of the year. And then the Spaniards came and pretty much slaughtered them, not with their swords, but with the diseases and stuff, right? And then even better, the Catholics came. And the Catholics came and decided, you know, they're all ignorant. We're going to make them not ignorant, and they decided their food was the food of poor people, and they started calling it peasant food. And so nobody ate quinoa for 500 years until we found it to be this perfect blessing. But I think I skipped one. Nope. Just so you guys know, P means previous, so if you get stuck, or you can always find the thing. My mouse, I'm having trouble seeing today. But he also did he had a whole bunch of slides with this, but a quick review of things we talked about, right? So we talked about fatty acids. So actually it has a beautiful ratio. It has both omega-3s and omega-6s. Like, look at all those. Amber, you don't get to draw these on the test. You just have to draw proteins. So they have a test tomorrow, and she just always had trouble drawing the kinks. Good memories, huh? But it does, he talked about, it's really high also in lysine. So lysine is really important for carnitine. Carnitine, I'm pretty sure, is 3 amino acids. And that is something our body, I'm pretty sure, can make it in the liver. It is it's the question that's, I think we talked about liver's really high in carnitine. Animals cannot make carnitine. And so if your animal is vegetarian, for whatever reason, you have to supplement with carnitine because they don't have the capacity to put the 3 amino acids together. But we do. But lysine must be one of the 3 amino acids. I unfortunately don't remember all my stuff about carnitine. Really high in carbohydrates as well as fiber because it's a plant food. And so keeping your blood flowing, good proteins. And so he talked about like lobular protein. So it's like this perfect, beautiful food, and that everything works together synergistically. And that's the key. And so that's why rather than taking a supplement of vitamin C, how do we get it in whole food to nourish your blood, to nourish your brain, to nourish your whole body, and your nails and stuff. And it is gluten-free. And it's really high. It's the highest protein grain that there is. And it varies anywhere from 8% to like 20% or something. I can't remember the exact number, but I had learned that like decades ago that it's really high in protein. And so a lot of people actually like it. But these are these are the polyphenols. And so quercetin, it's really high in quercetin. And of course, the color of the grain is going to determine how much of these. But quercetin is really good for inflammation and cancer. They're both really good for the heart. And camphorol made me wonder if quinoa was where they isolated one of these from, but for wound healing and also for, I think that was, I don't know what that was for, but this was when he talked about the dark side. And I wanted to mention this in case you decide, oh, I want to go get quinoa. And again, you can find it anywhere. I always wash my quinoa. When I first started using it, like 20, 30 years ago, they all said you have to wash it. And the reason they say is it really, and it does, it has a really bitter, it has a different taste if you don't wash it. And I don't like the bitterness. And I think I have a picture here. So it is that the grain is covered with this guy, saponins. And so this is quinoa. And when you rinse it, when you put it in the water, this is what you get on top. I always rinse my rice, unless it's green rice. Green rice is really, you rinse off the chlorophyll, so you never rinse that. But you get, and same with lentils, I always rinse lentils. And so that might be part of why the tolerance that these guys can interfere with your microbiome. You don't have to, they're not like toxic and stuff, but they change the taste and some people don't tolerate them. The thing that blew me away, and again, this was 20, 30 years ago, I'm like, well, I rinsed it, how do I? And it was like, just pour it in a strainer. And I'm like, there's no way, they're tiny, itty, little bitty. And sure enough, you can put them in a regular mesh strainer and they don't go through. And so you just fill it with water and then dump it into a strainer and then you cook them. And it's just a 1-to-2 ratio, just like rice. And it takes 20 minutes to cook. The bitterness is the saponin. The reason the fly is here is it's natural to keep the bugs off of the plants. And so I don't know if that is why I wash rice also, but that is why I have to wash quinoa. And I don't know if that's why I wash lentils too, because when you wash rice and lentils, you get, it's not as strong as the quinoa. You definitely get this weird color that you want to pour off, but the brown rices and stuff give you that. Let me see. Yeah, and so continue eating a rainbow, as much of the rainbow as you can. Make something wonderful to share with other people. I've enjoyed that. Is there any, and you guys next week class presentations. So if you're ready to go Monday and you can get it over with, otherwise you're going Wednesday, and try to please be here. Set your alarm, because it is, a couple of people talked to me about it and they say, yeah, it was really weird having the computer there and black screens of people. Or if you're going to be on Zoom, you're going to start having to turn your camera on so they can at least see you, but it is kind of disconcerting for your classmates. So respect for them. They spent the time. The papers are due by the end of the week, next week. So I will see you all Monday. You're welcome.